Hello everybody, this is a short video to present our analysis of the audience participation that we got going through some questions related to strategy delivery during our presentation on connecting project and strategy management through integrated governance. The event report is as a link there, and you can access the rest of the contents about business integrated governance in the links below. Just to very briefly set the scene, during the presentation we explained a model that people can visualize that connects from business drivers through business purpose to strategy to objectives to delivery entities and back again through a cycle. We suggested that as a model it might sound simple, but when it hits an organization it gets quite messy and complicated, with prioritization challenges, dependency management issues, and a myriad of people and process to try and get this to work through. And we reflected that is it any surprise that strategy delivery is difficult, and the results for strategy delivery documented in many publications aren't particularly very good. Well, if you'd like to hear that preamble, please find the link to the YouTube video below. So what are the key challenges of strategy delivery that we gathered from our audience on the 11th of October? So we have a model for a strategic process, which you can read again in the big body of knowledge. We have looked at a framework for an organization and how it can cascade those objectives and sub-objectives throughout its structure. And that looks complicated and difficult to set up and manage. And we've got some evidence from various sources which suggests strategy delivery is difficult. But where are the areas of difficulty? Where might we look to discover our issues and solve the problems? There are many. In the big work that we've done, these are roughly the areas we've worked with people on. The first one there, clarity and communications, should be quite straightforward, making sure that strategy is clear and it's well communicated. The second one relates to cascade of objectives and sub-objectives and the establishment of clear accountability and their ongoing managing that accountability. There's prioritization and enablement. If objectives aren't prioritized, how do we decide where we deploy leadership time, funds and resources and make that commitment to an accountable person so they can be held fairly accountable whilst being enabled. The penultimate challenge there is around control, agility and integration. Can we keep on top of progress? Can we change our mind and pivot between things as priorities shift? And do we have all this joined together so that we can see impacts and choices very simply and clearly? And of course, underpinning all this, do we have the information, capability and the data sources to allow us to make decisions quickly and easily? There are many challenges that we need to address. So let's explore what your experiences are in some of these areas. The third topic we'd ask you to comment against is related to prioritising objectives to optimise resources, leadership time and funding. So, is it clear in your organisation how relatively each objective is prioritised? Can you see the priority for each of the objectives that you're working on? Are you clear on for the accountable people for those objectives? Have they been empowered with the leadership time, funds and resources in line with the priority of their objectives? Is there a high priority objective with not very much resource assigned? And similarly, is there a tiddler of an objective that seems to be sucking in everyone's time? And the tough question, prioritization, are you systematic about it? Or is it a constant ongoing battle and an emotion-laden squabble that seems to keep everyone occupied? In response to, in your organisation, are objectives prioritised? we got 112 responses. When we looked at those, we found about 10 categories, and we'll play back 6 of them. The first one we highlight, leadership issues and political dynamics. This is the one we don't really want to pick up on, but we need to. In the responses, people suggested that there's a bit of shout loudest culture going on. Internal politicking, positioning leads to lack of strategic focus and accountability, and in some cases competition rather than collaboration. And of course this means that our organization's resources are less than optimally deployed, with leadership time spent on resolving difficulties and squabbles. Not good. So what do we suggest, what do we propose as the response back to our audience? Well, clearly this can be toxic if we have a competitive leadership with some winning, some losing. We're not necessarily convinced that those that are benefiting from this scenario really want to change from this scenario. So we really need to escalate this to the highest levels to knock heads together and deal with this if we want to address it even. In other parts of the presentation, from other outputs from the sessions, we got responses that were related to poor communication, but that was poor communication of the objectives. What we're talking about here is poor communication of the priorities, the inability to explain what the most important things are and how much more important they are. Clearly, poor communication of strategic intent and how local objectives are meant to provide a response to that is key to strategy delivery, and we're not going to achieve purpose unless we can manage these inconsistencies very effectively. Our proposition to our audience is that we set up and manage a business support function to communicate strategy and continue to provide assurance on the integrity of the cascaded strategy and its related prioritization. And there are many aspects to the big framework which can support the capability needed to do this. We decided to play back lack of clear guidelines and inconsistent implementation together because clearly they're quite related. The responses we got suggested there's very little process for prioritization, or at least formal process, and coming up with prioritization in itself therefore proved difficult. And not only coming up with priorities was difficult, but then clearly implementing that was not going to be easy either. Inconsistency clearly leads to misaligned efforts, but also can lead to squabbling about which objectives are the most important. So our proposition back to our audience and our attendees was that a business support function can develop and manage the prioritization process and enable the governance frameworks to establish and maintain fair accountability, where prioritization determines how much funds, leadership time and resource are allocated to activities surrounding any particular objective. And there are clear capabilities within the big operating model, the big framework that enable us to do this. This is another double-headed response that we've merged together: conflicting priorities and resource constraints. Well, if we have conflicting priorities, we need to work with resource constraints and decide which priorities are most important. Many responses indicated that priorities are often in conflict, as in they are at odds with each other, as opposed to, or as well as, being multiple priorities we have to choose between. And if we have ineffective decision making around deploying leadership time, funds and resources, we're going to have difficulties. And this is exacerbated if we have different team focuses. We have local needs that conflict with our leadership priorities. Clearly, this is an issue if we have finite resources, leadership time and funds. If we're not able to manage those conflicts effectively, we'll waste time in trying to manage that and not get the right resources across to the right endeavours. So the proposition to our audience is to provide a business support function to develop and manage the prioritisation process, to enable governance frameworks to have visibility of resource deployments against the priorities that have been set, so that decision making can be made easier. And of course, there are components within the big framework which enable us to do this. Many responses highlighted their organisation's reactive approach to prioritisation, where objectives are set in response to immediate and tactical pressures rather than the broader strategic plan, which may be set well, but simply not resourced. And clearly this can undermine effective prioritisation for long-term planning alongside immediate-term pressures, showing in conflicts, perhaps even between those who have short-term bonuses to hit their target this week or this quarter versus those that are working on developing share price and getting a longer-term based bonus. So what's the answer? It may well be around making sure that our bonus schemes are consistent and work. So we set bonus systems that have the right balance between targeting and getting people to focus on near-term, short-term revenue type performance, as well as the longer-term growth and value growth expectations that we might have strategically. Lack of empowerment, in my mind, there are two aspects to this. One of them came up in responses in this session, and that was that employees didn't feel empowered to make decisions about prioritisation quite often. But in other sessions we've run, empowerment also was understood by people not feeling they had the correct or adequate resource allocation to carry out their accountability, or their resource allocation or the funding allocation was taken from them whilst they were in mid delivery, which caused them pain and discomfort, leaving them poorly empowered. And of course, why is this an issue? Well, lack of agency within our staff can lead to disengagement and reduced effectiveness. Unhappy people are not enjoying life and all valuable to the organisation long term. So what's the answer? Well, again, provide business support to develop and manage the prioritisation process to enable us to deploy resources, funds, and leadership time against priorities to enable and empower accountable people. And again, there are many components of the big framework which will enable us to do this. In summary then, the majority of responses fell into the negative category, indicating lack of clarity or understanding in the organisation regarding prioritisation generally. There are also a number of mixed responses showing ambiguity or only partial satisfaction. There weren't many relatively positive responses, and there were improvement responses which were positive about needing to make change, and the challenge responses highlighted specific barriers that prevented prioritisation from working effectively. The challenges in total highlight the complexities organisations face when trying to address effective prioritisation of objectives. These issues require strong leadership, clear communication, and an effective operating model to overcome them. Many of which we can service with business integrated governance and all that it comes with. It seems that, well, there are many common issues that we've just gone through. There are plenty of responses that we've received to do this analysis on. The themes, I believe, are very clear. And the question is, can you leverage these example themes, example ideas, to help your organisation understand itself? Can you engage key stakeholders to accept their current state? Do these issues we've discussed relate to your organisation? How do they relate? Can you map the current state of your organisation and how it currently looks after its journey from purpose to vision to strategy? And is there a clear operating model behind how that then is driven and sustained through the organisation? And can you, with your organisation, identify some key triggers to help key stakeholders accept and define and agree, I guess, what the key pains are that all the key stakeholders face? Do they see possible gains? And we can use the big framework to offer the potential building blocks for how those gains can be achieved. And can you see and explain what needs to be built to operate the integrated governance to make some of these things go away? So what next? Well, the next question we'll write up and share as soon as we can. There are links to find out more about BIG. You can register for event 2. Event 2 is about a deeper dive on the knowledge around BIG to help you understand it and explain it and see how it fits you a little bit more. And there's an event series, and there's a third event in the series, which will be a very much more of a workshop for those that want to try and work out how to do this within their organisations. So allow me please to offer you business integrated governance. Well, what is it? There are many ways I could describe it. I can describe it from various perspectives, but in a nutshell, business integrated governance is the integration of our purpose into a vision, to the strategy that achieves it, to the delivery that makes it happen. And that has to work through all levels of our organisation across all parts of it, from strategic levels through to management and leadership levels, through all the teams, and we need to connect everything up so that we can make choices to coordinate and achieve what we want to achieve. To reiterate, it has to cover business as usual, valuation and change. So in P3 space, we see strategy delivery as change, as strategy portfolio, strategy program. Well, we need to make sure we align performance of our business as usual, product development, as well as our change capabilities. The big body of knowledge, therefore, has a lot of theory and a lot of examples within it. It explains the key concepts that we need to engage organisations on this. It offers some principles that we can use to test where we are and what we need to make the capabilities that will allow us to run this. It will describe the components. It doesn't just describe theory. It suggests what the work breakdown structure might be, what the product breakdown structure might be for the capability that you need to operate business integrated governance. It offers a life cycle for how to get this on the exec agenda, to build a business case, to develop the enablers, and move on into waves of business change, which include the enablement of people, development of process, configuration of tools, etc., etc., etc.